is an evaluation of the simplicity of the Just Say No anti-drug campaign.
Well, thank you all for coming today, and thank you to PSU and its sponsors for putting on the annual symposium. So, like Sarah mentioned, I will be doing a campaign assessment of the Just Say No campaign. Now, some of you may remember this campaign launched in the early 80s, kind of ran through the early 90s. Their famous catchphrase, "Just say no to drugs." Well, today we kind of take that and we make fun of it a lot. Just say no to milk if you're lactose intolerant. They also had a very famous phrase, "This is your brain on drugs." So Nancy Reagan was the founder of this campaign, which also provided the means for her to be able to have all the resources necessary. In fact, it was not only backed by the president, but the Congress at the time, other government agencies, and private investors. While it targeted the white, middle-class, junior high age students, it used those sources of outlets to deliver their messages through PSA or public service announcements and their printed material. As you can see, "This is your brain on drugs." We have modernized it to show eggs frying in a frying pan, but they used it in distorted brain pictures. And we'll have a short movie clip. Possibly. Anyways, in this movie clip, you would see Nancy Reagan and Clint Eastwood at a preview of a movie. And they would say something like, "Well, what would I do if I was offered drugs? I would just say no." So, what you might be asking yourself in this campaign is, what kind of factors influenced it? Well, if you want to be more accurate, although very biased, is you would say, what was the ineffectiveness of this campaign? What kind of components went into that? Well, let me tell you, it was the designers that ignored historical low rates of this sort of campaign with the abstinence-only education behind it, with 2 parts of strong negative language, with a high levels of fear-based campaign. So let's take a historical viewpoint. The anti-substance education started back in the 1880s, beginning with research mostly and getting the information out to the public on why substances were bad. They were mostly looking at alcohol and tobacco back then. So they were just getting awareness out to the public. But when Prohibition started in the 1920s, that's when the abstinence-only preaching, don't do anything bad, don't drink alcohol, go to church every day, that's when that started up. So then over the next 50 years or so, we have flip-flop between anti-substance approaches of abstinence only and informing the public about why drugs are bad and letting them make their own decisions. So what is abstinence only? Well, abstinence is self-restraint from specific activities like drugs, and sex. However, it does not tend to work, especially in areas of drugs and sex. Studies have actually shown that when people are faced with peer pressure, students need solid explanations and honest discussions about why they should question their desires or their interest to experiment with drugs and alcohol and other things. So moving on to the two-sided negative language used in this campaign. By using those words, just say no, the responsibility shifts from both a political and medical aspect and puts all of the pressure onto the individual to make the right choices, and it's all up to their morality to get them out of a situation. The second part would be psychological resistance. When a person is told to do something like, hey, you, just say no to drugs, they feel their personal freedom and their choice is being threatened. So they're going to react in the opposite way. So now I've said, hey, everybody, don't do drugs. Now you all want to not do that, and they want to go out and do drugs. Doesn't work. So, like I mentioned before, this was a very high fear-based campaign. So, fear is a very basic human sensation, and it can be a very powerful motivator. When it comes to the extended parallel process, there was 4 parts that you put into this model that you can add up with fear-based campaigns. It would be severity, the perception the individual has to the degree of threat, susceptibility, how the individual views the impact of the threat towards them, self-efficacy, the belief that the individual has performed the necessary tasks to control the risks, and then response efficacy, the perception the individual has if the action is carried out, they will effectively control the risk. Well, if we apply this to the Just Say No campaign, there was high levels of severity in the messaging paired with very low levels of the individual's control to be able to avoid these situations. If you just say no, everything will go away. No one will ask you ever again. Well, in the response efficacy, it's unsustainable because people will keep asking you at a party or at the next time you go to a concert. You can't keep saying the same thing. It doesn't always work. So my recommendations, if this campaign were to continue today, I would improve the slogan to shift some of the responsibility away from the individual. It should also address that drugs, while they are bad for you, should not be entirely scary. And we need to provide information on changing behavior and easy means of controlling the risk of abuse. We should teach the public what drugs are, how to avoid the situations where drugs could be, different ways of saying no, because just one word won't get you out of every situation. Encourage role models to speak up on the matter, and give information to them to make their own decisions. So what could this type of research or assessment have on the future? Well, new qualitative research should be conducted to find what factors play a role in making effective anti-drug campaigns with the advanced technology that we have today and they didn't have back in the 80s. Modern technology can help present new, enhanced anti-substance messaging. The potential to deliver and captivating and effective messages through social media is a great opportunity for research to dive into today. So thank you, and have a lovely day.